The next one is converting between radians and degrees. Now, I always like to tell students whenever you're doing a mathematical problem for trigonometry, typically if the problem is in radians, do the problem in radians. If the problem's in degrees, then keep the problem in degrees. Sometimes we do need to convert between back and forth, like arc length and stuff like that. So it is important. And sometimes if you need to verify something, it is important. But I don't want you to convert, back into degrees because you like degrees better than radians. Don't do that. Okay. But it is important to understand how we do this. And basically to do this, all we're simply going to do is use our conversion ratio, which is either going to be a pi over 180 or 180 degrees over pi. And that all depends on what unit you're trying to go from in between. So if I'm trying to go from radians to degrees, I want to multiply by 180 degrees all over pi. The reason being is I want my pi's divide out, right? I want these pi's to divide out. And when these pi's divide out, now I'm just going to be left with a negative 11 pi. I'm sorry, no, the pi's divided out. So when I do this, these pi's are now going to divide out. And then 6 goes into 180 how many times? Well, that goes into 30 times, right? So therefore, 30 degrees. This can be negative 11 times a 30 degrees. And now you can say that answer, or at least my final answer now, is going to be a negative 330 degrees. Now, what about if I want to go from degrees to radians? Well, we're going to do the exact same idea, but we're just going to flip it. So now it's going to be pi over 180 degrees. All right. And pi over 180 degrees. So now I kind of have this fraction, right? I have 315 degrees, or not degrees, because the degrees are going to divide out. So let's actually divide those out. That's the whole purpose of this. Okay. So now I have 315 pi over 180. So how can I kind of divide things out? Well, I think the one thing that I recognize here is that this is 45 away from 360, right? And so therefore I want to see 45, that looks like, does that go into 315 and 180? It does. And therefore now I can just reduce this or simplify this answer by dividing the top and the bottom by 45. And now what I'm going to get is going to be a 7 pi over a 4. Now, what about if you have something like this, a 5 pi over 7? In this case, you're going to need to use a calculator, okay? Because what the common thing that students have is they're like, oh, it's not in terms of radians, so it's not a radian. No, it doesn't matter. The main thing is, do you see a degree symbol? No. So if you do not have a degree symbol, in this case, then it's not degrees. It is radians. It's just not written in terms of pi. So what you're going to need to do in this case is you're going to need to multiply by 180 degrees all over pi, okay? And when you go ahead and do that, you're now going to get an answer of 326.58 degrees. Okay. And again, this is going to be rounded. You can round it in any way. Just want to kind of give you that example, but you're going to have to use your calculator in that example. So be careful with that.